Without stating the obvious, I'm sure we're all aware that feedback is central to student learning. Paul Ramsden argues that effective comments on students' work represents one of the key characteristics of quality teaching. Di Housnell notes that it's long been recognised by researchers and practitioners alike that feedback plays a decisive role in learning and development beyond the formal educational settings. We learn faster and much more effectively when we have a clear sense of how well we are doing and what we might need to do in order to improve. Some of our best known research comes from Dylan William and Paul Black. In the 1990s, one of the most talked about books amongst teachers was Inside the Black Box. The authors summarised more than 250 research studies arguing that assessment for learning could do more to improve educational outcomes than almost any other investment in education. And the list could go on. And we've not even mentioned perhaps the most well-known of all, John Hattie. Bruce Robertson, in his recent publication, tries to give context to something known as the practice feedback loop by referring to amateur golfers. He states that many amateur golfers don't tend to improve because they don't practice enough, and when they do practice, they often practice the wrong things because they've watched endless amounts of YouTube clips or TikTok reels. These are referred to as groove faults, and the amateur golfer would do better if they had access to a professional coach who could guide practice and give feedback in the teachable moment. A teacher is a professional coach. Creating practice opportunities and being on hand to support learners as they practice is an essential part of any teacher's job. From what they then observe, they can then give feedback, which then informs practice. This practice feedback loop is essential to propel learning forward. Like other aspects of our teaching, the purpose of the practice feedback loop is to support learning and embed it in long-term memory. So why should we read yet another book or engage in further professional learning around feedback if we know it makes the biggest difference to student learning already? Here are two reasons why though. Firstly, everyone in education is already using feedback, yet we're not necessarily managing to use feedback well enough to double the rate of learning, which is what research identifies as the expected effect. Secondly, feedback, like so many initiatives in education, has fallen prey to overhype through a combination of gimmicks, misconceptions, and oversimplification. Some of these myths that have been peddled include the following. All feedback is good. The time for feedback is always during plenary sessions. Feedback should be written down so that there's proof that feedback has been given. Grades and levels are feedback. Turning students' achievements into numbers will make the process of learning easier to understand and therefore easier to improve. What are your thoughts? You can pause the video now for independent reflection or discussion with colleagues. These are just a few misinterpretations that have developed over the years, and according to James and Jill Nottingham, these are either wrong or partly wrong. And this is why we should read yet another book or engage in yet another professional learning discussion. Feedback is a skill and will always need refinement. There's always going to be a need for us to provide better feedback and create those conditions for effective self and peer feedback.